This week we've got my longtime friend Thomas Allen. Now he works for Bassmaster. We're going to talk about green carp. We're going to talk about what's more important, walleyes or green carp. You know how that direction's going to go. And we're going to talk about some Instagram girls and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Bigwater Podcast. I am Ross Roberts, and you know I like to fish. That's what I do for a living. But sometimes we got to talk about it because the wind's blowing. Seems like every time I do one of these, the wind's blowing. Maybe that's a good thing. But it helps me get together with old friends. I don't even know if I use the word friend. I'd say acquaintance. Thomas Allen, Bassmaster. I knew him back before he was a big shooter with Bassmaster. Thomas, thank you for joining.
You know, Ross, I'd love to say it's a pleasure, but really the pleasure's all yours.
Yeah, I knew this was going to go straight down really quickly.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch our language here, brother, because typically it goes downhill that road real fast.
It does, and you know, I knew that the minute that I met you, you were actually an account manager for a media company, and I had been dealing with another guy, and you know how it is in this work. There was a few years there where it seemed like there was a new girl every day. You know what I mean? It was just like a different person, and here I get this guy, and now there's another guy that I have to impress or deal with his little idiosyncrasies of how he wants things done. And what works for this guy don't work for this guy. And right out of the gate, I knew we were going to get along because you're like, hey, man, listen, here's the deal. I looked your shit up. You've been doing this. You've been doing that. I was a freelancer for a number of years. I ran my own thing. I did what you do, so I know the problems that you guys encounter. And I'm like, I've never heard that before. Like so
and
many.
Yet you were still a thorn in my side.
Right, well, I mean, I didn't say this was going to be easy. Well, I mean, I must not have been too much of a thorn because I did weekly work for you guys. Literally, I think I did a weekly blog and then some print stuff through the years. We did a decent amount, but I mean, you could throw me a compliment if you want.
I mean, I was your editor. I had to do some editing. No, it was good. Look, that's a funny time frame, and really we'll have to get into that time frame later if you want. But you're right. You kind of go through a lot of people in this business. And there's a lot of temporary spots, it seems like. But when you get in the right kind of person that understands what you're doing, understands the needs, no matter what they are, and is able to fulfill them working together with other people, it's kind of a whole new game. And so I think what gave me a step up on any of my competition, if you will, if there was any competition, because nobody really wants my job, is the fact that I had lived the life of a freelancer for 5 years and scraped by, and there was a lot of times I didn't know how I was going to make the minivan payment or didn't know how I was going to, get this or that. But because you do that, I think that changes your outlook going forward. And, if nobody's writing is perfect, I can edit the heck out of something, but if I send you a piece of mine that needs edited, you're going to find some mistakes that I overlook. So being an editor is different than being a writer. So your stuff, it was okay. It was okay.
Wow. I could say the same of yours. I've heard people that edited your things through the years. I mean, train wreck.
I've had some bad. I've actually made some mistakes. There was what was it? It was one of the last issues of North American Fisherman before that thing just went belly up and floated away. I misspelled a word. In the beginning of the magazine, we had this 2-page spread, and it was a big photo. And in Bassmaster, we call it opening shot or opening cast or whatever, first cast, something like that. And North American Fisherman had something like that, and there was just one word across the top to describe the picture, one word, and I spelled it wrong, and it got published.
See, but how does that not make it through the other chain? Or was that just when that ship was so thin then?
Well, it was me, pretty much me and one other guy doing the editing, when before everything went down, there was a staff of editors that would go through things. And really, at Bassmaster, that's what we do, where there's a group of editors. So 3, 4, 5 of us will look at every single piece 2 to 3 times, which eliminates a lot of chances of mistakes. But even such, it still happens. One of my favorite ones, I wasn't there, but I love this story. But they were talking about public waters, and they forgot the L in the word public. And so it appeared in the magazine as pubic waters.
my third grade sense of humor can appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, now we can laugh at it. Back then, everybody was in big trouble.
Oh yeah. Well, everybody's so serious, and I think that's the thing. And I know you half joking when we say these things about my stuff, but I've been very fortunate. I've been in the biggest publications that there is since I was in my teens, and I think that yeah, I'm not a technical writer, but I think the thing is I won't name names, even though it would be really fun at some point if we could. There's an awful lot of big name writers out there that suck, or they just regurgitate or just flat out lie. And I know you know
That's
this,
right.
and you know the same guy. So yeah, I mean, do I have some run-ons and some fragments and this and that? But that's, I've been fortunate that guys like you have cleaned those things up for me, because I can remember a huge publication telling me when I said, hey, they're like, listen, we've got to clean everybody up. We got guys that ghostwrite.
Yeah.
I know you work with a guy who ghostwrites for a lot of other magazines. We won't say his name, but. And they're like, hey, we got to clean up after these guys too, because everybody, even if it's just the look of the publication, so it's maybe not even right or wrong, it's just they're going to format towards their thing a little bit. But I appreciate you.
Every publication has a style, and if you don't edit under that style as a writer, you're not going to be able to write under that style. And it's just as a simple example, North American Fisherman, the style for that publication for the word rod tip was one word, rod tip. At Bassmaster, it's 2 words. And that's just a simple style thing. And I mean, if you understand how to communicate, you can probably write fairly well. Yeah. And, that's it.
And I think that what you understood, and this probably goes back to your freelance days, is I'd rather have a guy. This was kind of where you were at. Like, I did a lot of DIY, a little homemade stuff for things with you back in the early days, where that's information or stuff that really guys weren't doing, or if they did, it was regurgitated and they didn't even know about it. If you quizzed them on it, like they didn't know that, what, huh? Because so many of these guys don't really live it and do it. There's a lot of writers out there, unfortunately, that don't actually hunt or fish. Like,
dude, I can't tell you the number of media events I've been on over my career. Countless events. And the writers, and I think that there's a fine line to be towed here. Like, it's important as a writer who's been invited to a media event to stand in the back of the boat, ask questions, write notes, and produce content at those events, videos, stories, photos, I don't care. But when the work is done and it's time to pick up a rod, in this case, fishing, very few of them can manage it. And I mean, some of the best, most renowned writers in the business hold a bait caster, not really knowing how to set the magnetics or the drag or whatever. But on a bait casting rod, you got the little pistol grip thingy. They put their finger on it like it's a trigger, and they hold the rod like that, and so the rod just turns in their hand when they're reeling. And
like a spinning reel upside down.
Well, now I've not seen that at an event, but I know people that do that. That wouldn't surprise me. But the thing of it is I don't necessarily have a problem with that level of a standard of expectations, but me personally, I'm not going to write about. I'm not going to produce content on a subject that I don't feel like I could go and reproduce. And I do that because I believe I want to be perceived as authentic. I want my readers, my viewers, whoever is going to look at anything I've produced, not edited and put in a magazine, but work I've worked on specifically, I want it to be authentic, and I don't want to sound like an idiot. And I know you know this, Ross, with all the clients that you work with, I'm sure you get guys that hop in your boat every morning and they're like, yeah, well, I fish all the time. Oh. And then you get out there and you can see they really have no freaking clue what they're doing.
I had a guy one time said, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I probably can be your first mate. And I thought he was kidding, but he was like, yeah, I was on a charter in 94. True story. And I was like, 94? You were on a charter 25 years ago and you want to be the first mate today? Okay. I said, I got you. Just chill. I got you.
And
you can't even blame that on millennials. These are old guys.
Well, but here's the thing, and I've thought a lot about this because I know we talk. We're going to talk more about mentors and those that kind of influenced us, but the standard that I want to live by working in the fishing industry is what Al Linder set. And those guys back in the day, it may still be like this at Linder's Angling Edge. I'm not 100% sure, but back in the day when Fisherman was in its heyday, those guys showed up to work with the boats hooked onto their trucks. They may have never come unhooked during fishing season because as soon as the work was done in the office, they were out on the water. They were not only fishing, they were making content for the magazine, if they were filming the TV show, but they left time to go fishing, and it was a priority. And today's business model in the fishing industry is not leaving much room for that. We work at Bassmaster, and I'll tell you, we haven't gone fishing as a group in 2 years. And it's the nature of the beast right now. And of course, with what's going on in our world currently, there are other limitations, but that's what I loved about the fishing industry was the Al and Ron Linders of the world that made dang sure there was time to go fishing before the sunset at the end of the day. And that's what's been lost, I think, on today's generation.
We've had Troy Linder on the show, and we actually talked about it in another podcast too. I brought the Linders up as an example of I wouldn't have the ability to do what I do if it wouldn't have been for Al and his group.
That's right.
And all of those things you said, I would love to disagree with you. Matter of fact, I'm trying to find a way to. But a good friend of mine, his son just said to me, hey, can you help me get in as a fishing rep? Like he's coming out of college, wants to be a fishing rep. And I'm like, you're not going to fish then, right? I mean, you're going to get fat because you're going to eat fast food and you're going to drive around a lot. And you're going to sit in a home office, just so you know. And they don't understand. They think they're going to go fishing with me and you and stuff like that. And it has been a lot tougher. I mean, and I think that's tougher with the writers and the way that those things have gone. But
well, writers are a different breed. And I think that their intelligence and their ability to take the information they're given from a pro angler, and this isn't true for every writer, but the best in the business, David Brown, Mark Hicks, there's a young guy up in New York, Justin Broulard, friend of mine. They have the talent to produce content, and there's a lot more. Those are just a couple guys. They have the talent to produce the content based on the information that they garner from those conversations. They're humble. They don't need to be in the content. That's a thing that a lot of people forget about, or like the people want to be the center of the attention. And if you're a writer, you got to be not heard and not seen. You need to produce a content from what you learn from that person. And nobody needs to even expect that the person writing the content is inserting themselves in that content. And I have that happen, and I kind of have to temper that back with new and young writers. Like, look, I know you want people to believe you know what you're talking about. The way you build your byline, the best way to build your byline is to create believable, educational, and easy to consume content. And after 10, 12, maybe 5 years if you're lucky, you have a byline that indicates you're an expert. And that's important for a writer. Now, if they're an expert on the water with a rod and a reel in their hand, that's a bonus, but most just aren't.
Well, and I think to your point, you said this without saying it, is a good writer is they don't have to be the best fisherman, but they understand it. Like they know the terminology. When I've dealt, I've been interviewed a lot and continue to be, fortunately, by guys, and when they don't know the terminology, I don't need you to be a great fisherman, but when you don't even understand the terminology, I mean, where would that be acceptable? If we were selling cars and someone was like, the transitional thingy, transmission? Yeah. Like, and you're interviewing me like some car guy, where is that acceptable?
Well, what's happened is I think that the culture of big business, big magazines, big editorial, professional sporting events, they look at the hunting and fishing industry as largely redneck based, and they think that the bulk of those people are not as intelligent and they don't hold a candle to the regular societal standards, and therefore they have tried, but they see, I'm not going to quote you the exact number, but hunting and fishing, if they were businesses, generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 billion a year. Okay, that's a lot of money if they were just individual businesses. Now that goes from everything from bait shop clerks to rod and reel manufacturers to whatever. Okay, the point is, these people in big business that are not involved in the outdoors, they see that money, that dollar amount, and they want to get in on that. And their way to get in on that is to overtake the rednecks because they're not that smart. They come in on a corporate level very often, which we saw at North American Fishermen, and I knew it was going to be a dumpster fire from the minute they stepped in the door because they didn't have a clue.
I love the term dumpster fire. Whenever I can work that into anything, when people say that in meetings and stuff, I immediately have affection for it.
Well, and again, we could go into a lot of detail. It's a conversation for another day maybe, but North American Fishermen wasn't in perfect shape when they came in. It needed new leadership. It needed a redirection. It needed help. But it needed that type of leadership from somebody that, A, was invested in the sport, cared about fishing, but also somebody that gave a crap about business. And too seldom, you just don't find those two attributes with people. So it's a weird world. We're still seeing that, but I think we're on the edge of a paradigm shift where there's going to be more endemic or fishing related, fishing passionate people taking over these businesses. Like Pure Fishing was just acquired by people that care more about fishing than the previous organization. That's another hot mess too, but it's is
it perhaps a dumpster fire?
Dumpster fire, train wreck, I don't care, however you want to say it, but there you go.
So So I ran into you at ICAST, and I hadn't seen you for a bit. It seems like it's always one of these events, whether it's the Bassmasters Classic or ICAST. But I guess the good thing is me and you are a cut of this. I hate to admit this, the similar cloth, similar sense of humor, and it's like we hadn't seen each other for 5 minutes, not
Right.
God knows how long it's been. But for other people that don't know your whack sense of humor like me, we're gonna try to get to know you a little bit. I want 7 rapid fire questions. I don't want you to think about these; just fire them off so that we can get to know you a little better. I mean, it's not really gonna happen or work, but just let's work with me. Favorite vegetable?
Broccoli.
Ooh. First car?
My first car was a 1981 Chevy S10 in a baby blue color, 5-speed with it had a white grandpa-esque topper on the back, and I blew that motor up in about 4 months.
That doesn't surprise me. I've seen you with equipment. Biggest bass?
My biggest bass, surprisingly, is about 712. I've not ever been able to break that 8-pound mark.
Okay, that's not
And
surprising
honestly,
either.
my biggest smallmouth was like 7.5, and that came out of bait and knock.
I caught an 8.4 out of a farm pond, and I'm not a walleye guy, but that's nor here nor there. This is all about you today. Biggest
Whatever,
walleye?
keep going.
Biggest
Hit me
walleye?
up. Biggest walleye? I caught a 10-pounder out of Sakakawea when we lived in Minot, North Dakota, off the shore.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Sakakawea, it's got a comeback. People don't realize this. It's like, everyone's Devil's Lake. Sakakawea people, if you're listening, you like to walleye fish, it is back, and nobody fishes there because access and everything is brutal.
And the northern pike fishing in that lake, and even
Crazy.
up into what's the one in Fort Peck in Montana? Some of the best pike fishing in the world.
Yep. I got to fish there about 20 years ago, and we were accidentally catching some giants in there. That's another one, but it's great because there are like 40 miles between boat launches, and there's nothing there. We stayed in on Fort Peck. We stayed in an old where the dam was built. I mean, these places are like 100 years old, and it was like what was supposed to be temporary lodging like 70 or 80 years ago. So it was pretty nice.
Yeah, that place doesn't get the attention it deserves, but it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's like 20 hours from everything.
Yeah, it was brutal. Anyhow, back to the rapid fire
Yes.
questions. Most embarrassing fishing moment, because I know you have so many, so I know this is going to be difficult.
Epic fail might be another one. So we were fishing back in Iowa. I lived, I don't know where I was. I was living in Guthrie Center at the time, and we had we fished every year as my tournament partner. It was a 4-man event, so 2 boats together for a combined 10-fish limit, and you couldn't communicate with anybody else except the boat you were teams with. So it was on Brushy Creek Lake, which kind of became our home lake, and we had won some tournaments there and as a team and done well. And then this 4-man comes around. It was probably the last 4-man tournament I fished. I think I actually moved. I was living in Minnesota working at North American Fisherman at the time. So I went back to fish it, took my boat, and we had won it once, got second twice, and the closest second place was by 100th of an ounce. Like, it was the slime off a fish belly we got second to. It was sketch. Like, I think they should have weighed us again.
Your partner must have been really good.
Yeah, well, I'm a good net man. Look, team's got to have a net man. I ain't gonna whatever. So we're in this thing, okay? I know that our other boat had 18 pounds, and we had like 16. We needed a good cull. We had a little 15-incher skinny fish that we needed to cull out, and we're down to, I would say, a half an hour. And I'm throwing a square bill crankbait up against a big blowdown, and it looks right. Everything's good. Fish eats, and it comes up, and it's like a 4+. It's a big fish. This is going to be a big cull, and I'm just racing like an idiot, and I'm like so excited to be a Bassmaster guy or whatever I was thinking. I went to boat flip that sucker, and it hit the windshield and bounced back in the water and off the hook, gone, because I was boat flipping with a treble, with a crankbait is just not the right thing to do. And so that was
an Iowa moment, not a.
There's plenty of embarrassing moments. Don't get me wrong, but the point there is we lost by 2 pounds. We got second place to first place again, but in that fish we would have won it. So I blew that up. I blew it for the whole team.
Well, I could call you the bridesmaid, I guess. But so the thing you hate the most.
I hate the most.
3. We're going to skip right over that. Top 3 places to fish.
Well, it depends on your species, right? So if I had one place of all the places I've turkey hunted, deer hunted, my favorite place to visit in the world is Lake of the Woods. We'll put that at number 1. I don't care if you're walleye fishing, muskie fishing, pike fishing, perch fishing, bass fishing. It's all awesome. And if I could live there and make money, I would live there. Nothing like a good old classic Iowa farm pond. There's one back home that I grew up fishing, and I could send you a pin on Google Maps how to get there right now, and you could probably catch a fish on your first or second cast. I know it's still good because I have a buddy that still goes there. So we'll just call that the unnamed Iowa farm pond. And then something about Mexico. I've had an opportunity to fish both Lake Picachos and El Salto with anglers in, and probably my favorite memory is Picachos. I went with my son a year and a half ago in November, and it was off the hook. We caught over 100 fish in one day on one lure, and by the end of that day, it was a Berkeley Chapo. It was broken. So I would put those three places at the top of my list.
Tell me the difference between covering or working with bass guys versus walleye guys. I don't know that this is going to be an unbiased opinion, but I want to hear it.
Well, I think probably one of the biggest differences is walleye guys haven't had what they deserve as the time in the spotlight. So as a general rule, most of them aren't as practiced and polished as a bass angler, where professional bass guys have had cameras in their faces for decades. Like, it's been a really big deal for a very long time. And I think that there are some very talented, media savvy walleye guys out there, and I could name a bunch of them, and they're good friends of mine, and you know them too. And they've had that opportunity, and that's largely because they were involved in walleye fishing before it. I think it's taken a bit of a nosedive in the last 9 years, but and I have some theories on that, but it's hard to compare the two, because you're looking at, we know that spending a lot of time pulling, well, in your case, multiple boards with baits back there, that it can become a giant cluster when a fish gets on, or you can't just stop the boat, reel that fish in, because all those lines might come together. Like, there's drama to be showed there, but it's never been conveyed to the public through live coverage. These tournaments haven't been covered on the water in a way that B.A.S.S has been doing. And I wish I really had an opportunity to do that, because the walleye world needs a shot in the arm, and a lot of it is the coverage angle. It's one thing to have a camera streaming live.
I agree, and believe it or not, I'm not throwing my walleye brethren under the table when I say this. I think part of the problem, back when FLW, kind of made their thing, behind the scenes, I can tell you that there was some money from the bass side that was being injected, because just what you said, we got to do something with this. There are people that still want this. There's not like 5 other shows in town. Like, we could be the guy at this, even though it's not going to ever be what Bass is. Bass are not in 48, or walleyes aren't in 48 states. They're not going to ever have the participation. It is what it is. It's a smaller market. It's just like turkey hunting or anything else, right?
It's still a measurable market, though. I mean, there's enough people to make that type of coverage worth it.
Right. And, I hate to say this, but I've said this privately or not. This is a lot. This is probably the first time I've publicly said it. Is I was involved in some of these things, or at least around it. And these guys said, hey, we're going to do 3 more tournaments, and we're getting money coming in. And all the walleye guys threw a shit fit. And when I say all of them, minus a few, because most of these guys that were pros, and they're getting wrapped boats and Suburbans and all the expenses, fees paid, like a bass guy, which is a big deal, 50, 60 grand a year, in savings, if not more. They're told you're going to fish 3 more tournaments. A bass guy looked at that as that's another chance, 3 chances to win 100 grand or 125 grand. You know what the walleye guy said? Hell no, I can't. I don't have any more vacation time. And I know the companies came back again around these talks, and they said, "Well, are you a walleye pro, or are you job A? Because if you're job A, we're not going to give you a Suburban and a boat and entry fees. You know what I mean? Like, you can't take it both ways."
You're absolutely right, but the problem there is the sponsorship dollars. There was not enough of it to go around to make these guys leave job A to become a full-time touring pro. And, I think that if there was enough money to be made, and I don't mean like 50 grand, but a living that is more comfortable than that, that's in included tournament earnings, as well as, what kind of salaries they could draw from these sponsorship companies. But here's the problem. And I have, like you, I've got a lot of very dear friends that fish professionally as walleye pros, and I think that they're some of the best anglers out there. And I believe there's a handful of them that could make it into the Bassmaster Opens, that would win and make it to the Elite Series. There's not many, but I think there's a few. And so what I say is, out of love to that, the biggest crutch, the biggest hurdle the professional walleye angling crowd needs to get over is live bait. That is what is keeping them from becoming the next level.
Well, that's straight out of Al Linder's mouth. You know, that's the big Al deal right now.
Well,
Has been.
Has been, and that's a whole nother angle we could talk about. But from a content curator standpoint, you're not invigorating the walleye fans out there by hooking a minnow through the nose and putting it on a harness and trolling it behind the boat. That's just not invigorating. You're not developing new techniques that a curator like myself could write about, we could shoot videos about. And by doing that sort of thing, if you take live bait out, you have the Strike Kings, the Berkeleys, Zoom, etc. All of those bait companies are going to start building baits to accommodate the new techniques that the pro anglers are developing. And the only way the public is finding out about it is through the content curation, the coverage on the water, and then the post-event like wrap-up information where they can send a piece of content out to the masses about how Jason Shakurit won Port Clinton, Ohio, pitching a jig as opposed to trolling. Like, there are changes that could be made, and the old guard of walleye fishing would resist that. And I think if you were to start tomorrow for the 2020 season, you would have quite a pushback. But after 2 years of doing it, it'd become the new norm, and it would survive. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on this too much because I don't know if people care about it as much as we do. But I think that, you know, the other thing that I saw, and again, you know, me being on both sides of the, you know, the table, if you will, you can make a living doing it, but most of these guys don't want to do what you need to do it. Like, you can't cast a line, even in bass fishing. You know, again, maybe Kevin Van Dam can, maybe Andy Morgan or somebody can, or whatever, but you can't just cast a line and fish. And, you know, I've written, if not thousands of articles or things, and worked, you know, obviously what we joke about, but with you for years. You have to do both sides of the deal. And most of these guys, I can just tell you, I mean, I wrote a book like 7 years ago, best-selling walleye book, and because when all this stuff started going down, right? Yeah, believe it or not, sentences and everything, pictures too.
I think I've seen this book.
Yeah, it did. It was.
I've been using it since the toilet paper pandemic came around.
I feel bad for you because we use some high-quality pages, and that wax is not going to help out. That's just going to be like slip and slide.
Oh, boy.
But, you know, with that, I mean, some really big name anglers, and none of them, you know, some of these guys didn't have photos. Like, I'm like, just send me a headshot. I mean, just send me, and they're trying to, you know, text pictures or whatever. And I'm like, no, resolution. You don't have to explain that to top tier bass guys. No,
but see, the organization does that. The organization they understand the media needs for this stuff. And it's, you know, Bass isn't perfect. They've taught me a lot of things about coverage and here's what I'll say. Like, there's a fine line between the organization making decisions for the vast majority of the pool of anglers, but when the anglers get too deeply involved in those types of decisions, there's a different perspective that occurs.
I see where you're skirting. I know you can't say anything right now, but I mean,
I don't need to because it's just reality. But here's the bottom line: is the walleye world needs two things. It needs a strong, demanding media presence. And that might be, let's just use the NWT as an example. They have some media presence there, but if they had a magazine, they had a podcast, they had social platforms that functioned well, and they had coverage at events, I could go on and on. That's what the walleye world needs, number one. Number two, people like to see fish. I remember, dude, and I know this is your neck of the woods, but each time we'd come to Port Clinton, I mean,
we're here now.
Well, here's the thing. A couple thousand people would come to those weigh-ins. We'll use the word thousands. And you know why? Because there was giant numbers of giant fish coming in. People love to see the fish. The anglers are important. Absolutely. The Tommy Scarlesses of the world, people love to see him. All kinds of names of guys that are famous in the walleye world. Gary and Keith, Chase. The names go on and on. But that's kind of the second-hand reason they come to see these tournaments. They want to come and see the fish, and I think that that's a mistake that we're getting into. Of course, I can quantify that decision to an extent, like in some Wisconsin waters, Minnesota waters, where they don't allow the carting of fish, or there's slot limits. I know there's challenges, but there's ways to get around that. But the point of it is to see the best in the world win on a particular lake, and they get to see the fish that they caught. That's the package the fan base comes to see. And that is how you get the sponsor activation from Minn Kota, from Ranger, from et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is having people come to the weigh-ins, participate in any type of expo. I know it's not perfect. It doesn't all work this way, but that is the basis. It's about the fish. And I think there are organizations out there on both sides, bass and fishing, that have devalued the fish. And that's not going to work long term.
It's like a bad recipe when you got more than one thing wrong, and there's multiple things, and there's talking heads going in every which way. And again, I know you're probably not going to say anything, and I'm not close enough to talk really super educated about it. But you look at like what Major League Fishing did. I think there's a lot of guys now that aren't as happy as they were a year or two ago, and you can just shake your head or not. But I think that Bass didn't make a lot of the right decisions either that led to that.
No, and I'll say this, I trust me, I've been a Bassmaster fan for a long time, since the early 90s. I learned about it, and I believe in the organization, and I realize I work for Bass, but I'm saying this as an angler too. They created the algorithm, if you will, to make bass fishing a worldwide sport, and it's worked because of that. And I don't think anybody at Bass would deny this. To a certain extent, Bass created MLF. And I say that as a capitalist. I believe in going out, making as much money as you can, earn it, be proud of that. I'm an American. That's what makes America great. That's one of the many facets I really believe in. I have no problem with MLF in itself. And I'll say this publicly, the problems I've had with it is kind of how they've done things. And I say that knowing that there's some bad blood, and I'm reasonable. But I think that they would do better. They would have a longer standing in the game if they would put fish on scales. But
even let's not even go there. Let's just say, because again, we don't want to go down this road, because this has been an internet. I mean, this is just this is a dumpster fire on steroids where we're about to go, which I love. But I think that let's bring it back to what you're currently doing, not slinging mud, and not that that's what we're trying to do. But what I believe that Bassmaster, you can agree or not, I'm going to throw it out there. And again, I'm not super in touch with these things, but I know a lot of these guys, a lot of the companies I work with also, work with them as sponsors and stuff. I think that it's fair to say that they maybe weren't as aggressive, rested on their laurels, whatever you want to say, took some things for granted. Major League Fishing, because competition, they didn't really have, yes, FLW, but the competition hadn't been the same. When you go to a Bassmasters Classic, people, if you've never been there, it is a Super Bowl event. I was there. I think one of the last times was when it was down in New Orleans. They're filling up the Superdome. Okay, like there's a football game. So, like you said, a big walleye event has a couple thousand people. They're filling the Superdome up. There are people that come for a week. This is an expose. It's insane. So I think the best thing that happened to Bassmasters, although there's definitely been some giant-ass speed bumps and some people's careers may be permanently tarnished because of it or whatever, the Major League Fishing, I think, ultimately gave Bassmaster a shot in the arm because they realized, hey, we got to make some changes.
We were not taking as good a care of our anglers as we should have. And it was a communication factor. And I think that we've really upped that ball game. And I'll be honest with you. I don't BS. I know you know that about me. I wouldn't say this if I didn't believe it, but our leadership recognized this. And it may have taken the MLF introduction for us to step back and look in the mirror. And it really helped us make steps to move forward. And early on, I was mad. I was hurt. I think the fan base was too. But the whole thing is I don't want careers to be ruined because of this. So I don't want to say that I hope MLF succeeds. But in a sense, I do, because I have friends that fish there that have put everything on the line, like I have, like you have, in our own ways, and I don't want that to be taken from them because I understand how important it is to them. And you know what? I have made decisions that have cost me money, that have cost me standing, and I look back and I don't necessarily wish I'd have done things different because it educated me. And maybe that's what this is for a lot of those guys, the younger generation especially. They may look back and say, I learned something from that, and I think that's the most important thing. Just like Bass, we learned something from that. And if you can, look, every day you get out on Lake Erie, you might know exactly where the fish are and what they're going to do, but they may throw you a curveball, and if you don't adapt at that time, your clients aren't going to re-up with you if you don't go and catch fish. You have to learn to adapt. The way you learn to adapt is by making those mistakes.
I think, me and you know more about the politics and the behind the scenes than most people probably listening to this or follow it more. Obviously, it's our job. So for people at home, I think a good analogy would be, I've been with Mercury Outboards for more than 20 years. I'm very happy with my Mercury Outboards. Have I had other opportunities and things? sure, I mean, anybody that does well probably gets those here and there, or somebody chirping. But I don't want, for example, Yamaha to file bankruptcy or go away, because that's not
Right.
good for a Mercury. Mercury's not going to be as innovative. You're not going to have the new Pro XS 4-stroke, V8. All of these things, like, competition is good.
It is good.
And if you don't think it is, I just give it a little bit of time. And I think I think Bassmasters had been the king for so long that I think that they kind of forgot. I think it's like a marriage deal almost, where, you're kind of just so used to it. And then when you don't realize it till you don't have it, but the damage is done. And I think that hopefully it looks like things have been repaired enough that there's not as much damage.
Without a doubt. But like I say, let me reiterate, I don't want them to fail. Okay. I think that having a different level of competition, a new level of competition, is fine. And frankly, I don't care about their format so much. It isn't about that for me. It's about the people. It's always been about the people in this game. I enjoy the relationships I have. I enjoy getting to know the people. And what they have on their jersey doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care if it's a Bass Shield or an MLF shield. If it is, if it's about anything, it's about the heart. I want to know that these guys,
we're still fishermen.
They're still fishermen, and it's the passion for the sport that drives everybody. And look, we've got people at Bassmaster. This is kind of, goes back to what we're talking about earlier, is our leadership doesn't fish much. And I'm okay with that because they understand business, but they also understand the value of having employees that can support that side of the game. And James Hall, Brian Brasher, Trip Weldon, Hank Weldon, and there's a couple others, John Stewart, that have bass boats and fish regularly. I have a bass boat and I fish regularly. And I think that our leadership sees the value in that. And so it kind of negates the whole, well, the leadership doesn't fish, so what do they know? They understand business. They understand finances. They understand what it takes to keep the lights on. And then when they don't know, and I've noticed this is something I value with my leadership. I'm big on good leadership. They will rely on us when it comes to fishing decisions, or at least they'll come and talk with us about that. And that's what I like about our organization, how we weathered the storm with Major League Fishing, how we're weathering the storm right now with COVID-19, is the simple fact that we understand what each of us brings to the table. And I think that being willing to listen in those cases is really the key to keeping us successful. And right now, things are weird. Things are tough. I'm working from my home. I've been here for 3 weeks. Well, 4 weeks now. I'm real tired of it. I kind of miss the office. But we're going to get through this. And as soon as we're able to hit the road and get on the tournament trail again, as soon as Major League Fishing is able to get on the road and hit the tournament trail again, everybody's going to have a rejuvenated look at things. And I bet it softens a lot of the bad feelings that has been there. And right now, I'm just looking forward to getting back on the water.
So, all right, we're going to switch gears a little bit because I hate talking about bass too much. I feel like I've got my quota of green carp for the day. But again, the elephant in the room is, and again, me and you have talked about this while you were making these decisions. I don't know that, I don't want to say you didn't have I'm not going to speak for you, first off, but I don't know that you had a decision to make. But when things kind of went south with North American Fishermen, you, I would assume, say, fortunately got an opportunity, but moving your family, because we talked about this on the phone, years ago, is, okay, I'm going to move down to Alabama where they shoot deer that look like dogs. They don't shoot like what you got on the wall behind you.
That one right there is not a dog, is it?
No.
That's an Alabama deer.
No. Well, there you go. It's not like some of those other ones I've seen, though, in fairness.
No, that's fair. Carry on.
So, I mean, that decision, to pile up your family, and, again, it's not like you're going to work at 7-Eleven. You're going to work at Bassmaster. Like, some could argue that's the pinnacle of what you're doing. But still, for a guy like you, like, I don't want to move to California. Like, if there was some fishing job, like, I don't want to go to, I love Shimano, but I don't want to move to California to work for Shimano. What was that like? I was. Let everybody else know.
Frantic for a while. I've always been a homebody. I like, if I could pick anywhere to live, it would probably be a toss-up between southern Iowa or central Minnesota. And I don't know what I would pick if given the actual decision, but that's home for me. That's what's comfortable for me. That's where I love to be. And obviously a lot of factors that have to fall into place, but you get into the whole, I want a career in the outdoor industry thing. And there's a lot of, I would say that yes, to an extent, I've made it. I've earned a spot with one of the top organizations in the outdoors, and just that happened because of a lot of, well, it wouldn't happen without the support of my wife, who was willing to go wherever we needed to go for this career. And she works in long-term care with the elderly, so her job it's easy for her to find work about anywhere we go. So that was support I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done without. So that's important, but you're right. There came a point in time, and we can talk about the downfall of North American fishermen all we want, but it happened. And there was two of us working there. Luke Hartle with North American Hunter, good friend of mine. Like, we kind of became brothers through this because of the stuff we had to go through. And I had a good friend in James Hall and Dave Precht, who Dave just retired from Bassmaster. I've known James for years from going on those illustrious media events we were talking about. James is a legend, and rightly so.
For many reasons, on and off the water.
Yeah, he's a great fisherman, and he loves people. He loves the after-hours activities. That's one of the reasons I love him. But anyway, I was at a Mercury event for North American fishermen in, is it Fond du Lac?
Yep.
So we're there at the factory, and Dave Precht was there, and he wanted to catch up, and he goes, hey, I've heard what's going on. He goes, if you ever need anything, let me know. And it was about a month later, he called me. He goes, hey, are you in need of an opportunity? And I said, maybe. Where would I have to go? He said, Birmingham, Alabama. And I was like, I don't know about that.
Is there two Birmingham, Alabamas?
There's a Birmingham, Iowa, actually. There comes a point where you have to understand and recognize your commitment level to the dream. And I realized a long time ago I wasn't going to make a living from the front of my boat. So I wrote about it, and writing and content curation has been a passion. I love that side of my job. So it was easy to get into the industry working as an editor or videographer or photographer. But, that opportunity, he kind of got a hold of me. I said, I'm going to wait another little while, see what happens. And he goes, that's fine. We're not ready to move either. I just want to know if you're interested. I said, yes, I'm interested in discussing an opportunity if it arises. So that was February. May comes around. I hadn't heard from Dave. He goes, hey, I think we're ready to move on something. How are things with you? And it was like getting worse by the day. They weren't paying North American fishermen executives. Well, we'll say scout executives, because North American fishermen wasn't the problem. Scout executives were not paying the rent. Lights were getting shut off. There was a lot of problems, and I knew that it was a matter of time before the final toilet flush was going to happen. So I figured I better get out while I can. And I talked to my wife. I said, what do you think about moving to the South? And she's like, gets real hot down there. I said, yeah, it gets hot. And we're winter people, Ross. I like snow. I like ice fishing. I like the cold more than I like the heat. But I talked with you. Josh Douglas is a friend of mine that fishes the FLW Tour. I talked to him about it. I talked to a lot of people. Ross Grothy was a great support. He's a walleye pro. Mark Kortz, I talked to him an awful lot. I just said, look, I don't know what I need to do, but I made the commitment to get to where I'm at. And that means at this point, I either have to go back to work, punching a clock or bending metal or putting on shingles, whatever, which, there's plenty of good glory in that in itself. But
that wasn't your jam, though.
It wasn't my jam, but was I ready to walk away from the dream that at that time I'd invested 11 years into? And the answer was no.
God, I hope I never have to make that. I live in Mecca, right here of walleye.
But if you do, you gotta weigh the value of continuing the dream versus giving up on it.
That's a tough one, dude. I mean, and I respect you for making that, because I know that's a lot tougher decision. Like, I know people that live in 10 cities in 12 years. They move around. They don't care. But again, they don't have the same activities or pursuits or passions that we do. They're just as good watching a movie or reading a book. Me and you are like on, 5 o'clock, we want to go fishing.
Well, and you know what I had to look at, Ross, was I looked at the viability of Bassmaster. I didn't ask to look at their books, but I kind of I've been following it for 15 years at that point. I was very familiar with the organization. I was familiar with how the tournaments were run. I'd fished a couple regional nation events or state events, so I understood how it was going to work. And when you have a passion for the organization you're working for, and that doesn't mean I love everybody I work with, even though I do to an extent, it's the shield, the Bassmaster shield, that means something to me. And when
literally their logo is a shield.
Huh?
Quite literally, the logo was a shield.
Yeah, literally. And so, I mean, when I looked at that, and Catherine had said, look, we've invested too much to walk away at this point. If that's our next step, that's what we need to do. And dude, it's been a blessing beyond measure. I mean, it took me. So we've been here. We'll be here 5 years in August. It's the longest we've lived anywhere, one single place as a family. And it took, I'll be honest, it was probably about this time last year where I could look at Alabama and say, you know what, I like it here. And I was able to find ways to scratch that itch of these guys up here, and turkey hunt and do all that stuff. And the fishing is outstanding here. It really is. It takes some work on some of those famous lakes. You know, Gunnersville, dude, you got to have a blinker on your boat. At Gunnersville, there's so many people that fish it. But you got to look at what you got. You got to look at your investment, and you have to weigh the value of what it means to carry on. I was faced with a decision, and I'm glad I did what I did, and I wouldn't change a thing. This is a great place. And you know what? I may not like Alabama in July, August, September, and early October, but I understand why people love the South. I do.
It's a different world down there. You know, I've done traveling for my fishing stuff and companies I work with that are based down there, and it's a different deal. And I don't want to live there, but it's a really nice place to visit.
You know what, though, Ross? I've got a buddy that talks the same way. He lives in the same town he grew up in.
You used to talk the same way.
Huh?
You used to talk the same way.
Oh, I did. You're right. I said I'd never leave. But here's the thing. It has taught me an awful lot about our society. It's taught me a lot about American culture. It's taught me a lot about myself, my wife, my kids. You know, right now my kids are Southern kids. And I think that if I had to move home, I could see my daughter going to college down here. Like, we've become a part of it, and you would survive. If you had to move to California, you would find a way to do what you love to do. It might be different. I don't get a muskie fish anymore. I hate that. But I make enough money now where I can afford a trip home to muskie fish once a year. So you got to find ways to make it work. And that's really the baseline of wanting a career, having a dream of being in the outdoors, is you've got to align yourself with companies, if you're going to work with them, like Bassmaster, companies you believe in, leadership you believe in. I keep hammering that home because right now we're killing it. Like, we're doing a great job in all of this, but I mean that. I believe in my leadership. I believe in the organization. I believe in the anglers that make up the organization. But above all that, I'm one of the people. I'm one of the fans. I am a Bass Nation member. And because of that, it's easy for me to feel honored and obligated to do a good job for this company because I live it.
I get it, and I know that to be true. You know, one thing, kind of switching gears a little bit, is when we worked together back in, let's say, the North American fishing days. You know, that's when we were blogging, and then things are video blogs. And really, if you were in the business for 100 years, it wouldn't have mattered because things had changed so much. The long form 3,000 word, features and stuff had changed in most places. We were doing these short things. We were doing 800 words. Content is king, as far as we'd rather have 5 pretty good things than one really long, great one, because it's constant. And so me and you, kind of our styles, we were probably fortunate in that and seeing this thing switch around.
Yeah, the digital age.
But it also has some drawbacks. And I know me and my friends talk about this stuff all the time, but most people don't have enough matzah to come on a podcast and talk a real deal. That's why you're here, because I know you wouldn't cut no corners.
Yeah.
That standpoint, the problem is I say it with everything, and it doesn't matter. This isn't a fishing attack. This isn't a fishing thing. But I don't care if you're a dryer repairman or you're a newscaster. The internet makes everyone an authority and allows them access, or as one of my favorite outdoor writers always says, gives everybody a mean-ass bullhorn. So the fake it till you make it, I know that's your exact term thing that has gone on with social media. And we're going to talk about fishing because that's what this podcast and what we love. How much of that do you get to see? Because, I mean, explain, what is your title exactly at Bassmaster currently? I'm
senior editor there, and I wear a lot of hats. I go to the tournaments. I cover them with a camera. I cover them with the laptop here and write stories. And there are occasions where I do video work. And I do a lot of video stuff on the side anyways with my hunting with my kids and whatnot. So video is a key factor. But I also produce content for both Bass Times and Bassmaster Magazine. I cover all the gear. So if you open those books up, go to the gear page, those are my babies. So
now, I realize when we're talking about Bassmaster Elite Series or whatever, that this is not the direction we're going. But as far as guys that are just around, or maybe somebody that tries to give you their card, or things that you see because you're on social media, or you know some of these guys that maybe tried fishing some opens or some regionals or whatever, or the farm system, if you will. This whole fake it till you make it, or this Instagram thing, I want to hear what you really have to say. Because, I mean, we've had these conversations privately, but I'm telling you, there's more people than you think that want to hear it publicly.
Well, look, there are. The internet has created a platform for people to appear to be an expert, and that has worked positively in a lot of ways. It gives you access to, I guess, the people you revere the most, respect the most, and you get almost like a one-on-one interaction a lot of times. But the opposite is true. One thing that let's talk about women in pro angling. Nothing would do better than I would love, and I don't know anybody at Bass, at MLF, FLW, everybody would welcome a female angler that would make it to the ranks of the Elite Series, the Bass Pro Tour, the FLW circuit. That would be not only a giant shot in the arm economically for those organizations, it would be a great thing for just the sport in general. We need more of that. I really wish somebody would rise to that. But Ross, I don't know why. It's not that Bass, MLF, or FLW is preventing that from happening. We'd all welcome it, but it's not happening. And in a day and age where, I'll go out and say this, where feminism really has become a big deal to a lot of people, and I don't care where you stand on it, and I'm not here to preach what's right and wrong, and I definitely am not the type that's going to suppress females in the workplace. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I work with some great ladies. But why haven't they achieved the top level of fishing?
Now, I'm going to interrupt you because, again, I'm going to start a dumpster fire here. There has been a few in recent times that have tried to come across as they are. Now, have they not been successful? And I know you probably know who I'm even thinking about. Have they not been successful because they haven't been genuine? I don't know if they have or they haven't. Or, in my opinion, they are trying to come across as experts when they're clearly not at that level. Because it doesn't have anything to do with a woman. If that was a guy that had that same performance level, they'd be out. So you're at least still in. But does that hold it back because they go, well, see, this is what we're trying to do. We told you it didn't work.
Well, here's the thing with fishing is that. Let me draw a parallel for you. If you follow the hunting world and how quickly it's risen on social media and the digital age, if my grandfather dies and I inherit 500 acres in southern Iowa and I know how to put a camera on a tree arm and turn it on, I can probably kill a couple really big deer on film, and suddenly I'm deemed an expert. But if I can find a way.
But don't you think though? But don't you think is the difference though? Are you trying to come across as you're Drury now, or are you just trying to let it happen? I'm
going to draw that parallel for you. So take a drink of your water and shut your mouth for a minute.
If you'd have been closer, I'd have done a waterfall for you. But go ahead.
You're right. That's absolutely right. You can fake it easier in the hunting world because you can buy a hunt and you can hire a cameraman. You cannot fake it on the tournament scene. You have to catch the fish against many other anglers, male and female. You have to catch them the best to make it to the next step. And I think that there are probably some women out there right now. I think we're going to see it. This is my whole point. We haven't seen it yet. It's coming. And one lady that comes to mind, I don't know if you've heard of her, but Christine Fisher. She is the kayak girl. She's very well spoken. She's confident, and she can catch them. Dude, she's beat a lot of kayaking dudes, and that is absolutely not putting down the prowess of the kayak community because they're dang good anglers, but she has beat a lot of dudes, and that's a person I hope makes it. We want to have that presence. But see, here's the difference. I think that women don't think they can do it. That's my point. I believe there's been a lot of women in the fishing community that have been shut down and they've been told they can't, and that's just not the case. They can, and they're gonna, and it's gonna happen soon. Now, I know where we're going with this, so let me circle back to the point.
Dumpster.
So there are these social media platforms provide an opportunity for those types of people who are not capable of catching fish to put on a bikini, hold up a fish somebody else caught, and suddenly they've got 700,000 followers on Instagram, and they're deemed an expert by even some companies that got swindled by who they are. And unfortunately, that promotes professionalism to their followers. Those followers think that person knows what they're talking about when all they did is got on a saltwater boat and held up a big Dorado every other day and not wearing very much. I have a real problem with that because A, it's not genuine, it's not authentic, and they have fooled people into believing they know what they're talking about. And that's been social media, but that's the basis of social media. You can fake it till you make it there. And even if you do make it, when it comes time to be real, the proof will be in the pudding. If you learned enough during that time while you were faking it to actually become legitimate on your own, then great, good job. But most of them won't ever get there.
Aren't us guys a little to blame? Because, like, for example, there was a Instagram fishing girl that was like booth babe, whatever you want to call it, right? And all of a sudden, you know, like you said, have 1 million followers, and then there was then the brick hit the wall, and things didn't go right. And this lady put a video on saying the whole fishing industry was a fraud, you're all fake, you know, this and that. And it's like, guys, I mean, we're guilty because, I mean, we won't get into the biology end of things, right? But these guys, my point with this chick is she had like whatever it was, 700,000 followers. She gets on there, and these are fishing guys, like, oh, so-and-so, you're the best fisher lady. Oh, fisher. Oh, which hook should I use? Like obnoxious stuff that me and you even would roll our eyes at. But yet she comes out and puts a video on that basically says, like, God doesn't exist if you're a Catholic Pope. You know what I mean? Like, and you put that on there, but yet she still has 700,000 followers, and people are saying, "Oh, you're the best fisher," and it's like,
you know, that's here's the thing: they're generally short-lived. There's a gal in the hunting community that did something similar. She put out bow hunting tips regularly from her tree stand, and then like later that season, she's bragging about the first deer she's ever killed with a bow. Again. My wife hunts with me. My daughter is a little assassin. That one, if a deer or turkey steps out in front of her, it's in big trouble, and she's competent. I'm
glad you clarified assassin.
Well, I'm not getting into you know, opposing genders here because that's not what none of us want. We want them to succeed, and we need to encourage that. But the problem is if you're going to get on a social media platform, pretend to be an angler, take lots of pictures with big fish that maybe you just got to reel in. That in your boat, I suppose people are catching walleyes, but really the work was done by you to get them there. And there's hero shots, but I think that people get misled by someone's social standing on a social media platform because of the way they present themselves, as opposed to taking them for what they really are. If this individual we're talking about was an actual legit angler, we would be seeing that individual still today in fishing circles, at ICAST, at the Classic, and her own social channels doing this type of thing. But I think she got rooted out by people that were tired of it. And I really think that what happened is somebody somewhere called her out as a fake, proved it, and she didn't like that. And so she came down in the fishing industry.
Right.
If she could really fish, dude, great. That's what I want. That's what we all want. But you can't make those skills up. I mean, it takes the top walleye anglers, the top bass anglers have a natural talent that I just don't have.
Well, and the one that we were I know we're both talking about is the funny part is I was at I think it was ICAST. I'm pretty sure it was ICAST, and all in the same thing because it was a sponsor deal. And this girl was telling one of the winningest Bassmaster guys of all time on what not, you know, that they should be using, and as serious as a heart attack. I mean, I've never seen such like blatant like disconnect of like. Well, and I was like, you really believe you're telling like this multi-bazillion dollar absolutely angler that people fear, and you're trying to tell him why, you know, what not he's doing wrong? And I'm like,
well, it's because she at that point in time wanted to be validated as an angler, and if she's telling so and so how to tie a knot, then she's gonna feel better about it. It's a false sense of reality, and I hate it, but you know, we're really not going to get away from it right now. But what could happen is I feel like social media is very cyclical. It's very fast. Those algorithms on Facebook seem to change every other day. And I believe that there's going to come a time where, and we might be in a lot of it right now in the midst of this coronavirus crap, is people are not paying as much attention to that sort of thing. And I think they're forced to pay attention to what matters. When I walk around my neighborhood here, there are kids outside playing with toys. Not looking at phones. They're not on social media. I know that overall internet traffic is down in a lot of areas, and social is part of that now. Yeah, in some arees.
Man, maybe in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know. It seems like online shopping and stuff. I know I work with Fish USA.
Well, online shopping.
Their traffic is crazy.
Here's the thing: the world needs more Christine Fishers. The world needs more passionate people that are building a career on skill and talent so they can become an actual authority and educate the next generation. That's what we need.
And I'm not surprised that you brought her up because I don't personally know her, but there's two different PR firms, that I do stuff directly and indirectly with. And one of the ladies there that at the PR firm told me, she's like, you remember I told you this. I'm not like a superstar talent scout to tell you this because this chick is coming and she's beating dudes and she's catching them and she's legit into it. And
you watch, they're right. And I wonder this. I joke about this. If you were just to sit back and rationally look at a fishing tournament, how stupid it is. maybe the reason that women don't get into that at that level is they're a whole lot smarter than us. They're like, we could use that money for a car payment, or we could use that money to put a deck on the house or whatever. So they're kind of like, they get involved. They're like, oh, there's a lot of risk here. We're going to be smart. And, the old saying, there's a reason why women outlive dudes. And this
I have no reason,
one of those reasons.
I have no reason to believe that we will not be friends for another 20 years. And I don't know if we could ever get a better soundbite than what we just got.
Well, look, and I say that as a tournament angler and as somebody who's employed by a tournament angling organization. I'm being very sarcastic and facetious, but the reality is, the question is, why hasn't that happened yet? I don't know. I have some theories, and I'll go back and reiterate this because I definitely don't want someone to take out of context what I'm saying.
I think we all. I think anybody that would is a ding dong. That's not what you meant.
Well, today, especially in social media and digital world, it's easy to take.
It's still the soundbite that I'm going to use to lead in with, but don't.
You can hold that against me down the road. I'm sure you'll find a way to. But the point is it's going to happen, and it's going to happen. And when it does, it's going to be a massive boost to the fishing organization that it happens to. And I'm hoping I'm covering it when it does.
Here's the deal, and this is kind of a good way to kind of wrap it up. Fishing, if you would remove even what I do, I've been very fortunate over the last 20 years. I've been very successful at what I do on and off the water. I've been able to make a business at it and a good living. Even with that said, if you erase like fishing and you take what I've done and all that and you take it into the banker and say, here, I want to get a loan. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to try. And I need this. I need a $100,000. You won't say boat. You just, a $100,000 asset here. And I need a $60,000 truck. And I need this much of this. And I need to buy this many thousands of gallons of fuel. I don't think there's one bank even before the crash that would be like, we're behind you on that business plan.
Right.
When you spend $50,000, to go win 25, it's not real. It's not a real good long-term deal. But I think that it's no different than why you moved to Alabama. If you have a passion for this, you understand. If you don't, and you're listening to this right now, we could do this for another 3 hours, and you're not going to get it.
But if anything else, if nothing else, this kind of conversation sparks interest, or at least encourages somebody to investigate it, then it's a win. And we need more people involved. Really, the female involvement in the outdoor space, hunting and fishing, is one of the fastest growing demographics that there is. It is growing quickly, and that's a good thing. And so we're going to see more of that down the road. And who knows what tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now holds. But we're going to see a paradigm shift, and it may be a Christine Fisher working her way up through the ranks. She started in a kayak world, and maybe she gets into a bass boat and fishes a Bassmaster Open, and maybe after 4 or 5 years of investment, she has made the cut to fish the Elite Series. That is going to be a paradigm shift that everybody's going to welcome with open arms, because we need a refreshing level of participation. And my daughter, youth, it starts with the youth. You've got to work with them. You've got to get them out. This is such a good time, Ross, if your governor hasn't shut down your motorboat capabilities.
That's just that's Michigan. We're Ohio State. We're the Buckeyes. We beat up on those Michiganders.
Roll Tide.
How'd that work out last time we played? But at any rate, I think we took a natty from you. But I've agreed with you so much on this. It scares me. I think the only thing that I would say that I disagree when you were talking about the opportunities or how you can make it. I'm living proof in the walleye world or multi-species or non-bass that you can make a good living if you're willing to dig into it. There are so many opportunities out there, and while I don't agree with certain elements of it or things like, again, we didn't even go there like Guggen Squad stuff or any of that.
Well, we don't have time to get into that crap.
There's a reason I didn't bring that up. But again, the point is those kids are making a lot of money. Whether how I feel about it or you do is a different thing. There are opportunities if you have that passion and you really want to do this. But if you're just out there for, again, trying to get likes and clicks and you're trying to be somebody popular, you ain't going to last anyhow.
That's a fact. And honestly, we don't disagree on that. I think it's harder to make a living in the walleye world than it is the bass world, but it still comes down to your desire to dig in and find ways to make that money and not be above it. Like I wasn't, for a while, I was above moving to Alabama. I'm sure I said to you, I'd never leave the Midwest. Well, here I am in the deep South. You have to stay flexible and open and go where the direction takes you, and you'll find blessing in that. I can't overemphasize, like we can't leave Alabama right now. Unless the right opportunity with a lot of money comes up, we're not leaving, because this is what direction I believe I was headed in from the beginning. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I wanted to work in the hunting industry. I thought I wanted to be Michael Waddell or the Drurys. That's what I thought I wanted, except it took a pretty dramatic turn. And here's the thing, and if any of these fake it till you make it types are watching this and they're mad at us for what we said, I would say this: look at what you want to become and work to get there. Don't expect the recognition, the heroism, the fame to come unless you've actually proven you're legit. And there's the Guggens. They've just found a way to bring all their little gamer buddies to their YouTube channels that's in the millions, and then they started fishing. They didn't earn all that. They were doing something different before it all happened. And now they've got a bait company. Now they've got TV channels, YouTube channels, whatever. Let's get on my home lake and let's talk about finding bass, not on a pond, and catching the best 5 you can. We want to talk about that, then we've got the conversation worth having.
I can't believe we've talked for an hour and we mostly agreed. It actually scares me.
Dude, we could keep going. We could make this a whole day thing.
Let's. I've had my fill. I know you've had your fill of me too.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for giving us your time. Yeah, hit the button. And I mean, we're probably gonna have to do another one of these. We'll have to make it so it's not so long before we get between projects anymore. And
look, anytime you want to do this, I love to talk. And listen, above all else, the best part about working in this industry are the people I've been able to get to know, the relationships I've built. And that's not a kudos to you because I don't like you that much, but it is about the people. It's about the relationships you build, the time you get to spend on the water with people, and I hope we get to do that one of these days. I know we've talked about it for years and haven't ever gone. But
I really look forward. I mean, I'm going to close it with this. I really look forward to bass fishing against you and whooping your ass.
Hey, you better bring your A game, kid.
I don't even think I'll need my C game, but I'll bring it.
Wow, that's intense.
That is. But thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning into the Bigwater Podcast. Thomas Allen with B.A.S.S. Appreciate your time as well. Until the next episode, we are out. Make sure you check out Bigwater Fishing. We're pretty much on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, anything Bigwater Fishing, that is us. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time, catch some fish.